and just let me know.
Hello. Hello from Angus.
Pippa?
We're live now, Paulina.
Thank you very much. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to the joint meeting of scrutiny committees. I'd like to start by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting through the Council's YouTube page. Due to government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is taking place remotely in accordance with current legislation, which makes provision for remote attendance at and remote access to council meetings. The meeting is also following the Peterborough City Council's virtual meeting protocol. Before we move to the first item on the agenda, I will begin by calling out the names of all scrutiny committee members to establish their presence. So when I call your name, and would you please unmute the microphone and confirm that you are in attendance. So I'll start with Councillor Barkham, but I don't think he's arrived yet. Is that correct, team?
That's Paulina.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Sandra Bond.
Present, Paulina.
Councillor Brown.
Present, Paulina.
Councillor Burbidge.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Casey.
Present.
Councillor Coles.
Present.
Councillor Day.
Present, good evening.
Councillor Dowson.
Present.
Councillor Ellis.
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor John Fox.
Here.
Councillor Judy Fox.
Present.
Councillor Harper.
Present.
Councillor Haynes.
Present.
Councillor Howard.
Good evening, present.
Councillor Howell.
Present.
Councillor Iqbal.
Present.
Councillor Joseph.
Good evening. Present.
Councillor Lane. Councillor Lane. I can see you're here, but you just need to unmute.
Yes, sorry, Pauline, I was on another page.
Okay.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Shaz Nawaz.
Present.
Councillor Over.
Present.
Councillor Kaya.
Present, Paulina.
Councillor Robinson.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Rush.
Present.
Councillor Sanford.
Here, thank you.
Councillor Simons.
Yeah, present, Paulina.
Councillor Skibstead.
Present, Paulina.
Councillor Warren.
Good evening and present.
Councillor Wiggin.
Present.
Councillor Yazeen.
Present, thank you, Paulina.
I will now call out the names of co-opted members in attendance, and if you could confirm your attendance. Alistair Kingsley.
Present.
Rizwan Rahmatullah.
Present.
Parish Councillor Neil Boyce.
Present, Paulina.
Parish Councillor Keith Leavesley.
Present.
Parish Councillor June Ball.
Present.
Thank you. Unless somebody joined after I started the name call, that should be everybody present on the committee. So thank you. I will now move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the appointment of a chair for the joint meeting of the scrutiny committees, which is in accordance with Part 4, Section 8, Scrutiny Committee Procedure Rules, Section 13, Joint Meetings of Scrutiny Committees, which states that the chair will be appointed from among the chairs of the committees who are holding the meeting. Those chairs present tonight are Councillor Harper, Chair of Growth, Environment and Resources Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Simons, Chair of Adults and Community Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Over, Chair of Children and Education Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Aiken, will be in attendance tonight, but she's going to be a late arrival, so she isn't here for this moment in time. Can I therefore ask the committee if there are any nominations, and if so, please raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak. And I notice, Councillor Harper, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Paulina. I nominate Councillor Simons, please, as chair tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder for that nomination? I see Councillor Brown, you've got your hand up. Are you seconding that nomination?
I'll second it, yes.
Thank you. And are there any further nominations for the appointment of chair? No, I can't see there are any. There's no further nominations. So can I ask if any members of the committee object to the appointment of Councillor Simons as chairman of this meeting? If so, please raise your hand. I can't see any objections. I see no formal objections. So could I therefore ask Councillor Simons to take the position of chair for this meeting, please?
Yeah, thank you, Paulina. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Scrutiny Committee, and thank you for appointing me as chair. The purpose of this meeting is to provide an opportunity for all members of each Scrutiny Committee to scrutinise the medium-term financial strategy phase 2 proposals documents before being presented to Cabinet on 23rd of February for approval and a recommendation to full council on the 3rd of March 2021. You have been sent the running order for this meeting, which I will follow throughout this meeting. In order for this meeting to run smoothly, I ask members and participants keep your video camera switched on with your microphone muted, except when you are invited to speak. If you wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand. I and the Democratic Service team will keep an eye on the participants list to see who wishes to speak. Please be patient if you are not invited to speak as soon as you have raised your hand, as there may be many people before you. When asking questions, can you please state which document you are referring to and what page and section? The documents to be discussed can be accessed through Modern, Gov and Council website. You will have been sent a link to the agenda for tonight's meeting. The Democratic Service team will be monitoring the participants list to see if anyone has dropped out of the meeting, and will try and contact you to provide assistance to rejoin the meeting if this should happen. Should we run into technical problems, I ask for your patience. Should this occur, an adjournment of the meeting will be declared whilst the fault is addressed, and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible, the meeting will be adjourned until such a time as it can be reconvened. Finally, I would remind members that all virtual meetings are recorded. For the benefit of those people watching the meeting on YouTube, can I confirm that the Leader of the Council, Councillor John Holditch, and all the Cabinet members are also in attendance at this meeting. The Chief Executive, Gillian Beasley, with senior leadership team, who will assist the Cabinet members in responding to any questions. I will now move on to agenda 1 on the agenda. Are there any apologies, Paulina, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have the following apologies. Councillor Hemorrhage and Councillor Joseph is attending as a substitute. Councillor Ali and Councillor Shaz Nawaz is attending as a substitute. Councillor Bisbee has submitted apologies. And the following education co-opted members, Flavio Vites and Peter Cantley. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest or whipping declarations, please? Anybody, if they have, can they raise their hand, please? Seeing any raised hands, thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 4, medium-term financial strategy, 2021-22 to 23-24 phase 2 proposals. Please refer to the cover report for this item and Appendix 1, which is in medium-term financial strategy phase 2 proposals document. This has also been sent to members as a separate PDF document. Councillor Seaton, would you like to make an introduction to the medium-term financial phase 2 proposals as referred to in the Cabinet report dated 23rd February 2021, pages 1 to 40, and the cover report for item 4 of the agenda for this meeting?
Thank you, Chair. My Wi-Fi can be a little bit flaky, so please.
Yeah, Dave. Councillor Seaton, you're not coming Councillor Seaton, you're not coming across very clear. You maybe want to turn off your video.
I'm just going to give a few. Thank you, Chair. I'll try that again. Is that better?
That's better. Thank you.
Is that better?
That's better. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I was just saying it can be a bit flaky, but I'll try again. I'll just say a few words of introduction, and then I'll ask Peter Carpenter, our Finance Director, to go through some slides after that. I think the first point to make is we're not in the broad sunlit uplands yet, which I think is a quote from Churchill after H.G. Wells, but it will be good to get there one day. But we have made major progress. We've got a balanced budget next financial year and a route map towards sustainability in future. We've been praised for our openness, transparency and professionalism, and that will stand us, I think, in good stead in coming months as we work with MHCLG towards the fairer funding review and hopefully a better position for the council. So we have got some slides, and those slides are really just to remind members and residents of the journey we've been on and the next stages we're expecting to go through. So Peter, if you'd like to bring up the slides.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. Dan?
Are you hearing me still?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Chair, I'm not sure you're hearing me.
Yes, David, it's very flaky, but we did hear you. Yes, very flaky.
Okay, welcome this evening to tranche or phase 2 of the 21-22 MTFS. Dan, if we go on to the next page, I've got 9 slides in total. Just to reiterate, why do we have a challenge? There's a number of factors in Peterborough that make us quite challenged in terms of our financial situation. We have a low council tax base. 65% of our residences are Band A or Band B. If we put 1% on council tax, it's only circa £800,000. We have low government funding. In the papers, you'll see core spending power. We're £77 ahead, less than the average in unitary authorities. However, we're a fast growing city. We have been in the top 5 growing cities for the past 20 years. And one of the issues with that is funding generally lags. We have high growth, as we've just said, but also relatively high deprivation as well, which lead to more and more complex demands on our services. We have low financial resilience with low levels of usable reserves. We forecast by the end of the year to have reduced those to a level probably of usable reserves of about 11 or 12 million pounds. They will look substantially more than that because the government are giving funding for various council tax and business rate support schemes. However, the level is not significantly high. And obviously, we've still got the impact of COVID-19 going forward, which has hit all councils, and we are no different than everyone else. But we have been able to contain that reasonably well in this financial year. Next year, however, with the additional issues of increases in pressure and the government only funding for the first third of the year, gives us significantly more pressures. Next slide, please, Daniel. And just as a comparison of those two things, I think I've mentioned already, our council tax at the moment at 1,398 for a Band D is the 7th or 8th lowest in the country for unitaries, and there's 60 of us in terms of unitary councils. And you can see our core spending power per head of population since 15-16, and how it's the gap to mean for all unitary authorities increased. Next slide, please, Dan. So what actions have we taken? Because we've known we've been in this position for a while. We've had significant external challenge. We've had the LGA in over the winter of, I think it was Christmas 2018, and actually it reported back to this committee in January, February 2019 on where we were. We've had Grant Thornton in 2019 to this time 2020, which set out over £33 million of savings for the last financial year and put us on a road pre-COVID to closing the existing £14 million gap. And as part of the application for additional funding from MHCLG, we've had an MHCLG appointed government specialist in to vet what we've been saying in December 2020. We've looked to enhance our cost controls, and we've put in significant additional processes. A lot of these were there, we've enhanced them. And over the last 2 years, we've been running recruitment and agency panels on a weekly basis. And for the first year and a half, the Chief Exec, Gillian, was chairing those. I sign off all expenditure, not going through interfaces over 1K. All business cases are required for anything over 10K. We have a separate control process for COVID-19, which has been very useful this year because in terms of COVID-19, we've had over £130 million worth of additional funding, be that in grants from these or additional funding for the council. And those grants have to be monitored very closely for the government. And we've enhanced internal governance processes. We've undertaken core process reviews, contract reviews. We've been successful in a new towns grant application, and on the 10th of February, we were successful in our MHCLG application for exceptional support. Next page, please. However, we're still performing well. Individual departments' performances continue to be good. Children's Ofsted is a good level. Highways are exemplary in the east. We provide services at low unit costs. Again, we're compared to all 120 unitary type councils, so that's unitaries, Mets and London boroughs, and we are 98th lowest in terms of unit costs out of 120. Now that's quite remarkable considering we're only 70 miles from London. We've continued to innovate with things like Adults Positive Challenge and the Think Communities initiatives going on at the present time. We've got shared costs and management approaches across with Cambridgeshire with our chief officers and going down a couple of levels. We continue to bring in different ways of delivering services with our external partners, whether it be Skanska, Serco or the combined authority. We've reduced over the last 4 years quite significantly the council's property footprint, and we generate over 23% of our net, our gross expenditure, which is amounting to about £75 million from external income from one source or another. Next page, please. Where we started and where we got to in phase one was we had a £14 million budget gap. Back in September, October time, when we did phase one of the budget, we took a quite pessimistic view of the budget pressures and service demands. In that we thought adults market sustainability would cost us £5 million, children's placements £2 million, and the additional costs for replacing the fleet of Aragon direct services £1.5 million to get us to about £11.8 million total. In terms of funding changes, We thought at that stage, and this was based on our business rate and council tax returns, that our base levels for business rates and council taxes would reduce quite significantly. We also had £5 million of undelivered savings, mostly around business support and the rent for San Martin House for additional half floor. Business support have been redeployed to actually help with COVID. And then we had the collection fund losses over the 3-year period. Sorry, for this financial year, we've got about £11 million worth of business rate and council tax losses that needed to be spread over the next 3 years. And so that's the 3 million. And we had roughly £2.6 million worth of savings. That got us to the start point for this budget of phase 2, which was a 35.6 million deficit. And I'll just go on, just at this stage last year, we were in the middle of our lean reviews with Grant Thornton to try and see how we were going to reduce that £14 million. And we'd actually got ideas on the table for 12 million at that stage. They needed to be converted into business casing and other things, but that number was impaired down to just over 3.5 million in this year's budget. Okay, next slide, please. So we started at 35.6 million pounds, and actually phase 3 isn't particularly exciting. We've had small changes in budget pressures and service demands in terms of small items and bits of additional expenditure. One of the largest items being additional expenditure due to people coming out of detox from hospitals and us needing to pick up their additional income costs. However, most of this graph is about the additional savings or efficiencies we have. We've got £6.5 million of efficiencies or savings relating to council tax and business rates. We've reviewed, and using the government returns we have to do in January, what we think business rates and council tax are going to be for next year. We've bucked the pressures that maybe a lot of other councils have seen in terms of these two areas. We built between 700 and 800 homes this year, which is only a couple of hundred down on normal. And with business rates, the large Gateway industrial complex, which is just off the A1 at the top of the parkway, actually went live in the lockdown period. This has led to significant business rates for us during the year. That is tempered, however, by the fact that we have lost or will lose fairly soon the business rates income in the short term until it's relet of the Debenhams warehouse. The government funding itself has increased or reduced our gap by 12.7 million. Over 9 million of that, though, is COVID funding. The government and MHCLG, our parent department, has assumed for councils that COVID, and we will come out of COVID after the end of the first quarter of the year, so towards the start of July. So in terms of that, they are assuming a quarter of the year funding to where we were this year. So that's 12.7 million. That includes a 4.99% increase in council tax, of which 1.99% is general council tax and 3% is the adult services precept. Other savings and income is 4.4 million. Half of this relates to reduced costs of the capital programme because the government reduced the PWLB borrowing rates by 1%, and half of it is through £2 million of capital receipts, which are on track to deliver next year. So that left £13.7 million to bridge, which we applied and have had conversations with central government unofficially through the middle of the summer, but officially from the 1st of October onwards to look at next year's budget. And they were minded to approve a capitalisation direction for us to bridge that final bit of the gap. Next slide, please. So the capitalisation direction itself looks at 4 main areas: value for money, securing the long-term financial sustainability of the council, addressing the underlying drivers of our fragility, and making sure we're eligible. Between December and January, we've been questioned and cross-examined by MHCLG on 3 main things. Number one, have you got any further capital items you can sell? Number two, do you have reserves to bridge the large gap you have? Or number three, do you have additional savings? And our answers to all three questions are no. The result of the Grant Thornton review set out that actually if we had delivered pre-COVID, we're at the limits for that. As I've already said, we have limited reserves, and we've been using the capital programme to balance the budget in terms of capital receipts for the last 4 years. So in fact, what we've been doing for the last 3 to 4 years was actually what the government have asked all other councils to do this year. So we were slightly ahead of the game. However, you can only use those for so long, and what we have is a deficit that needs to be filled. So the review concluded in December from a guy called Chris West, who was the ex-director of resources at Coventry, that we had a strong case to be considered for exceptional support, and the government awarded us that support on the 10th of February. So going on to the final slide, the way forward. So the capitalisation has ensured we've got a balanced 21-22 budget. We have the ability to capitalise up to 4.8 million in 2021 of any overspend due to COVID. And they're minded toward us up to £20 million in 21-22. Of course, we've got 13.7 million of that earmarked already for the present deficit position. However, MHCLG are going to do an ongoing review of us to establish how much of that funding will be allowed between the 13 and 20 million, and how and what our path is going to be to sustainability. This is not free money, however. The only game in town for the government, for all councils at the moment, is a capitalisation direction, which means we're debt funding. So if we took the full 20 million, that would have to be repaid over a 20-year period, and our repayment rates are something like £1.3 million a year. Council has no recourse to alternative options, as I've explained already. But without receipt of the exceptional support, we wouldn't have been able to set a legal budget, which is a requirement at full council next Wednesday. If budget is not agreed, obviously my next step, which is one I don't want to take, is to issue a Section 114 statement, because we legally have to set a balanced budget by the 11th of March. Probably the only step I haven't mentioned is fair funding. Now, it's expected that the government are going to do the much delayed fair funding review, and consultations are going to start to come out just after the local government elections in May. At the moment, the aim still is for implementation in 22-23. We will be obviously fully feeding into that, because that's one of the key discussion points with MHCLG on what will come out of that fair funding. Will they, like they said originally 2 years ago, give benefit to councils who have high growth and high deprivation, which would be very beneficial for Peterborough. Thank you. Happy to take any questions and take the slides down now. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Okay, we'll open that section up to questions. Anybody got any questions, please? Please raise your hand. Councillor Judy Fox, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this is relevant to this section. It comes in page 21 against table 11. And my question is, under the corporate community leadership fund, there's 60,000 on 2020 to 2021, but then there's none against 2021-22 and 2022-23. Could you please explain what does this mean? Obviously, is there going to be funding for it? Thank you.
I will. Thank you, Councillor Fox. I will check that, because I thought that was an ongoing budget. So I will just double check that and come back to you, because again, it's something I hadn't picked up.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm a bit concerned because we look forward to that every year, so we spend it on the community. So that's great. Thanks, Peter.
Councillor Day, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Pete, I just wanted to ask a few more questions about the fairer funding review, because of the deficit that have been projected for 22-23 and 23-24. there is a quote, I think it's 9.3, where Robert Jenrick says there might be an opportunity to do it next year, and he's alluding to the fairer funding review. And I'm a bit worried about that word might. I mean, are you quite certain, Peter Carpenter, that they will be looking at sustainability next year or at some point this year, so that we don't have to rely on this one-off funding? And I just had a question about the capital, the funding from the MHCLG, just to double check. So that we've been allocated 13 million, but there is, and that's from a pot of 20. So we could use some of that next year if we haven't used all of it. Have I understood that correctly? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Day. In terms of all the meetings I've had, and I go to unitary treasurers meetings and also go to municipal treasurers meetings, when Alex Skinner, who is the Director of Finance for MHCLG, attends, and he's attended both of the ones in January I've been to, early February. The view of MHCLG still is that they will do the fair funding review this year for implementation next year, and that view hasn't changed yet. However, again, we need to see the paperwork coming out. I've already seen potentially a report earlier this week that suggested that the business rates review is being moved back to the fall, which would then make implementation next year more difficult. In terms of MHCLG, they're minded to give us up to 20 million, but this is what the review team will come in to look at. So they will assess our financial position again, what we need to deliver sustainability for the council going forward, and that's their assessment. Now we're expecting them to be in March, April time. At the moment, we keep chasing to see the full remit of that, who they want to speak to, what they want to speak about, and how. At the moment, we haven't got any more guidance. I would assume that's going to come out probably after next Wednesday, when the Chancellor does his spring statement. Sorry,
Can I just add a point there, Chair, if you can hear me? Yes, I could hear you now better. Thank you, Councillor Seaton. Because it's an old saying, isn't there? Can you hear me, Mother? It's worth making the point to Councillor Day, I think, that part of our argument to MHCLG would be that we would want to have that extra 6.3 million, because it could help us with some of the change that we want to introduce. So there will be an argument with MHCLG to be made there. Thank you, Chair.
And just the other thing, just to pick up from what Councillor Seaton's saying as well, because we've now had at least 2 years of 1 year only settlement, it makes it really difficult to plan for a 3-year horizon. And so the feedback that central government are getting from all councils is you've got to do something that's, even if it's not a fair funding review, that is 3 years so we can plan properly, because it's making it really difficult at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think that final point made by Peter Carpenter was actually a really good one, because I've seen some things in the press that this is the central government's been fantastically generous to Peterborough by giving us £13 million. What they've effectively done is they're actually permitting us to borrow the money that we will then sort of have to repay in the future. And it also gives me cause for concern that that if we want to go up to the 20 million, we've effectively got to get permission from central government. So I think it's a further move in the direction of central government control of local authorities. I think it's something that we should be concerned about. Having made that comment, I've actually got a couple of questions. The first question is, in the initial presentation that Councillor Seaton made, he said that we've got one of the lowest council taxes of any unitary authority in the country. Now, no one no one actually wants to voluntarily pay extra council tax. But aren't we caught in a trap that, because we've got such a low council tax, if the government allows us to have a 5% increase, that gives us a much smaller amount of additional funding than a council that has a much higher level of council tax. So this is probably a question for Peter Carpenter, really, but how do we get ourselves out of that trap with having such a low level of council tax? We're tending to fall further and further behind.
I'll answer it to begin with. I don't know if Councillor Seaton's got other comments, but it's a problem, and it's basically derived from the fact that the valuation office, which values buildings within Peterborough, well, across the country, has over 65% of our buildings in bands A and B. And so what it does is when council tax is calculated, you do it on an average of band D. If we've got the vast majority of our properties in bands A and B, although we've got about 59,000 or somewhere around the 59,000 mark for band D, but in reality, we've got about 80,000 properties, but it's slanted down. And so unless the valuation office actually changes how it values buildings, that will always be a significant issue for places like Peterborough. There's others like it as well, but it's because of our low property values in terms of the way the valuation office has valued us.
Thank you, Peter. I'd make a couple of points. I mean, I think it's good news, Councillor Sanford, that we're being able to borrow to deliver a balanced budget. But clearly, if we do that, and there's a repayment over 20 years, then any move towards sustainability in the future needs to take that into account. So one of our arguments with MHCLG will be, well, that's an extra, I think Peter said 1.3 million a year that we will need from government. That would be part of the fairer funding. But it's an interesting point on council tax. Peter's right that we have low banding and we have low council tax. We've got a double whammy there. I was interested to hear recently, 1% on our council tax is about £700,000 a year extra income. For Hull, it's £800,000. And if you go to Kingston upon Thames, it's £2.7 million for every 1%. So that's clearly inequitable. And it's something that needs addressing. And I don't have a solution to that at the current time. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so thank you. I'd just like to go on to question 2 now, which is probably a shorter question. It's a question for Councillor Seaton, really, because when we were looking in December at the phase 1 budget proposals, I think myself and perhaps another councillor mentioned that there wasn't anything in those budget proposals about tackling the climate emergency. And I think my recollection, Councillor Seaton, was that you said that something to tackle climate change would come in phase 2. But I've been through the budget proposals in quite a lot of detail and I can't actually find anything. Now, this is actually causing a little bit of a problem because I'm a member of the cross-party group that's looking at climate emergency, and we actually had an example at our meeting quite recently where we got a proposal that we wanted to put forward to the cabinet, but we actually had officers saying to you, well, you can't really do that because there's nothing in the budget to tackle climate change. So have you got any comment on that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things there. One is any points that the climate working group bring forward where there's an expenditure, I'm happy to consider. But clearly, the second point is that if you want to put something forward that will have a net cost, it's not cost neutral, or it's not a financial benefit to the council, then you'll have the opportunity to speak to representatives from MHCLG and make the case. And I think that's all I can say at this stage. I think we have a section with Councillor Tresti later where there may be questions about climate change, but from my perspective, that's where we are at the current time. We are looking actively at whether there are ways in which we can find money for proposals that come forward. And that could be from other areas of the budget. So it could be from POIS, things like that. So that's where we are at the present time. Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. Parish Councillor Juneball, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a couple of questions, so I'll just take the first one, if I may. It's in relation to Table 11 on page 21. What if the 10 million third-party funding and the 7 million borrowing doesn't work out for the purchase of TK Maxx? And similarly, if the 1.79 million borrowing doesn't work for the Vine in Bridge Street, how's that capital gap going to be closed? And I'm really conscious that a fifth of the council's revenue budget services capital programmes. So that's my first question.
Well, I think I'm conscious of that last point as well. And again, that's part of the sustainability argument we need to have with government. We have invested considerably in things like schools and roads as part of the growth, and growth is a key part of that discussion. Peter, did you want to cover off the points on where we are on TK Maxx and Vine funding?
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. I'll cover off both. Thank you, Parish Councillor Ball. In terms of the Towns Fund, because both the Vine and the Towns Fund are the Towns funding, we've received approval from MHCLG for up to just under £23 million worth of funding from them. However, there is match funding of up to another 24 million to complete the schemes. What we have over the next year is a timetable under the chairmanship of from the officer side of Steve Cox to move projects forward using the government green book to ensure that there are robust business cases for each one of them actually being moved off. The government have been minded to give us advanced approval, they've given us approval to say that the funding will be available for the Vine, and that's why we ended up buying in December, because we had that approval. Steve, do you want to add to that at all?
Yeah, thanks, Pete, and through you, Chair. Yes, to confirm what Peter's saying, the Towns Fund approval from government, 22.9 million, includes the amounts and the match funding that we've put into the budget. What we're doing is looking very carefully now at what uses we can bring forward inside the building, but keeping a very close eye on the commercial elements of it, so that the building itself has got uses in it that can pay for the running costs. And once we've established that, we can also look in parallel at what other community and cultural uses we can bring into the building. The priority is self-sufficiency. We've got to make sure it can sustain itself. But the byproduct of that is we've got a very active use in a prominent building on Bridge Street, which is critical for the city centre and the revitalisation of the city centre post the COVID economic downturn. So we're making sure that we're leading the way, and the success of the Towns Fund bid, I think, recognises the success of that and government support for it.
Yeah, my question is specifically, what if the third-party 10 million funding doesn't come off? What's Plan B? Is there a Plan B?
The funding that's indicated there is a Towns funding that we've got secured.
Third-party 10 million funding. I'm aware of the Towns funding being 28.3 with 1.79 borrowed. I'm talking about the purchase of the building itself. There's at a cost of 10 million, and it's going to be third-party funding. So could that be explained to me, please? If that third-party funding, which could be quite fragile, doesn't come off, what's the contingency?
As I say, the mix of uses in there will make sure there's a commercial underpinning, but the third-party funding is including our own funding and also funding we're seeking from the combined authority to help, for example, with small business space within the building, which again is part of the commercial opportunity that the building is presenting to us.
Okay, I'll go on to my second question.
Councillor Bull, can I just leave your second question till the end, because we've got about 9 people waiting, so I want to give everybody a chance, and we are on a time situation here.
I'm grateful, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Councillor Iqbal, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. My question relates to risk. It's pages 22 to 24. What do you see as the biggest risk to delivery in 2021-2023? Thank you.
I'll pick this up first, David, and
I'll take a view. Thank you.
Okay. In terms of 21-22, I think the biggest risk is COVID and how long COVID actually lasts and how COVID trails off. I don't think anyone knows in reality. And the MHCLG are making us do returns on a monthly basis, as our other government departments, to try and find out what that is. And that's going to be the big issue for this year. The government have given funding for 3 months. Is that going to be enough, or are we actually going to see things move along? Now, the announcements that are supposedly coming out in another 15 minutes suggest that maybe that money and those assessments might be correct, but we need to run those through. In terms of 22-23 onwards, I think the biggest issue is the fact that over 9 million of the one-off funding this year through COVID is COVID related and drops out next year. And obviously we have the capitalisation direction as well. So our gap going forward is circa 20 million, which we need to talk to local MHCLG about to try and map a way forward in terms of sustainability, which was part of the fine print around the extraordinary capitalisation directions that have been given to the 4 councils to actually have those conversations. So those are, I think, the 2 big things, but COVID actually dominates both.
I just add to that. I think it's pretty well the same point, but the speed of recovery from COVID is, for me, not just a 12-month issue. It's likely to be a multi-year issue. But the second point on the money dropping out, the gap in year 2, the key point here is, can we make the case to MHCLG for fairer funding? Can we make the case that Peterborough is underfunded? They will challenge us, and I'm confident that we can respond. But clearly, if there are any gaps in our thinking, they will identify them. So it's really important that Cabinet and the senior team work together in presenting our case to government. I think we've done an awful lot of work on it so far, but it needs to be a robust case. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Skipstead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mine question comes from page 35. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what, up to 40, yeah.
Yes, it was about the unit cost. We're 13% lower than the average. I just wanted to know the main reason why we're performing worse than other councils who have a high unit cost. What is the main reason for that, as we are performing using a lower unit cost?
I think the first, shall I start off, Pete? And then if you want to add something, we're not performing worst, we're performing better. We are 13% cheaper in our unit costs than the average authority. We are delivering services more efficiently than the average authority. We would have a bigger financial issue if we were not at that position in the league table. Peter, did you want to add something?
Yeah, what I was going to add was it's worth always looking with these at what the averages or what the means are and how far we are below some of these. And if we were funded on average, how much more money we would get. But as Councillor Seaton has said, we are providing high quality services at the moment for fairly reduced prices compared to most councils and our taxpayers.
And again, that's a key point that we'll be making to government. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joseph, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. My comments are basically page 11, section 4.6, but also on the presentation from Pete, which was really good. So in a nutshell, what it appears to be what you're saying is that due to years and years of cutting services to the bone and selling off anything that wasn't actually nailed down, our only option in balancing the budget is to go to borrow money to fill the gap this year and then have to find the money year on year to service that gap, and obviously presumably borrow more money in years to come. Is that actually a really sustainable idea for a budget going forward? Thank you.
I think that's an interesting view on the situation we're in. Clearly, you've got something like 400 councils in this country. And after 2010, the government had to make some decisions. One of those decisions was to put a stronghold on how much councils could spend and to reduce their support for councils. The fact that 11 years later, councils are still delivering the vast majority of services shows that actually across the country there was a fair bit of fat in councils. Now, what we have done is, you're right, we've sold assets and we've had a grant equalisation reserve that was intended to get us to a point where we had a sustainable budget. If you go back to the start of last year, and Peter covered this, we had a £14 million gap. We had found 12-point-something million pounds of savings, and we had 12 months to get to a sustainable position. The position we find ourselves in now is entirely down to the pandemic. We were actually in a reasonable position a year ago. I'm not saying it was easy. You know, budget setting time was always tough. But a £14 million gap, 12 million of savings, 12 months to close the last £2 million. So I think we're in a reasonable position. And I, as I say, pandemic has been the key cause of the issues we've seen. We've reported on that almost monthly during the year and set that out very clearly for councillors. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Coles, please.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose my question's in two parts. I'm very pleased to have been a regular attender at the Cross-Party Budget Working Group some years now. But unfortunately, the Labour and Liberal Democrat groups aren't cooperating and working with it. In our last meeting on the 5th of February, we had a very detailed conversation about the budget. Could you just confirm that the opportunity was offered to both the Labour and Liberal Democrat groups to come to that meeting to be able to understand in depth what the issues were? And my second point is, I know you, Councillor Seaton, you've always offered at any time for members from opposition parties to come and talk to you with any ideas that they might have outside of that process. I just wondered if you'd had any ideas or solutions from other groups during the budget process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coles. I believe actually the leader of the council wrote to the leaders of the Labour and Lib Dem groups on the 8th of February and asked them would they take part. and they refused. And I think that's really unfortunate, because I think something like the question that Councillor Joseph just asked, that would have really helped the leaders of those groups to understand the journey we've taken and to understand where we are. I must admit that I've had no ideas from them today. I'll ask Pete in a moment if he's received any proposals. I understand, they offered some ideas last March, Labour group did. They were cost neutral, so they didn't actually give a financial benefit to the council. But I've heard nothing in the last 12 months. Peter, have you received any proposals or ideas? I know you've been meeting with both of those groups.
So thank you, Councillor Seaton, and thank you, Councillor Coles, for the question. There are a set of proposals that are being worked up at the moment. I think probably it's better for me to allow Councillor Noaz probably to answer that when we come on to his question, but those are being worked up at the moment, and the proposals will be circulated. And again, there is a proposal also from the Greens which is being worked up. Again, I think the end product of that will be circulated as well.
Thank you, Pete. I'd just make the point again that there will be the opportunity to meet with MHCLG and to make your case for proposals if they're going to cost the council money, increase the risk that we take. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Holdridge, please.
I've lost my screen. Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I just wanted to say at this stage, we need to make it really clear that we have no permission to spend over that 13 point some odd million. That won't be. Pete said they're coming back in March and April. The letter they wrote to me that said they would be back in June. So we can't spend any of that extra 5 million. And I just wanted to say in terms of Nick and the Climate Change Committee, thank you for agreeing a way forward together, because I think that is the way we really ought to be going on most things. And I'm going to put a proposal to the Cabinet tomorrow afternoon to fund the ideas that you came up with in that committee. I've got to find some way of doing it, because if you take £1 out, you got to put a pound, pound back in, if you like. But I believe we've got one way, and also took into the combined authority, because we have an energy hub which we were going to take over. But if we keep it with them, they can immediately get, and it's available straight away, 20 million, which leads to another pot of 200 million, which will give us a tremendous boost in retrofitting houses in Peterborough, and heat pumps and solar panels and all the rest of it. So, the money, I'm sure, will actually be there. But tomorrow, I hope we will come out of the Cabinet meeting with a way forward on your proposals.
Councillor Burbidge, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask, please, are there any cuts to services planned as a result of this budget?
Thank you, Chris. And the simple answer is on this second phase, no. What we're doing is making some efficiency savings. We'll come to those in a bit. I mean, we're only making, I think it's around £3 million of reductions on budgets in both phases 1 and 2. Directly linked to services, they're all efficiencies and not reductions. I think most of the improvements in phase 2 are linked to tax bases, and I think there's some additional government funding coming in, but no cuts. Thank you, Councillor Burbidge.
Steve Cox, did you want to come in at this stage?
I'm hands up from before. Apologies.
Oh, okay. No problem. Councillor Howard, please.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions, if I may. Has the budget challenges in any way held back our support for the community during the pandemic? And if I may ask a second question as well, the opposition council. Sorry,
just ask one, please. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, sorry, Chair.
I think the simple answer there is no, and I think it's a really important message to make to the to give to the community. We've been able to fund all the actions required, so the testing, track and trace, the hub, the winter pressures and school vouchers. So everything we've needed to do to address COVID, we've been able to do. Clearly, there have been some implications. We've not been able to deliver the planned savings that I mentioned earlier. And I think we've been very public about that. A lot of that has been due to diverting resources to support residents to address the COVID issue. And that's been in our MHCLG returns, about £5 million. And it's been, as I say, it's been reported regularly. But actually, if you look at the opposite side of that, we have done some really good things. So at one stage during the summer, we were in the top 10 in the country. I think at one stage we were second in the country in delivering BES grants to businesses. So we were very rapid at getting money out the door to support businesses. And during the pandemic, we've had to deal with some very specific issues in Peterborough due to our population makeup and demographics. And I've seen it in the media recently, how high we are up the table for current problems with the infection rate. But we've been there the whole period. So that whole period, we've had a real challenge in Peterborough, and yet we've still been able to meet that challenge. And the budget challenges we've got have not stopped that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Shaznawaz, please.
Thank you, Chair. And as per Pete's previous comments, would you like me to address Councillor Cole's question first?
Yes, please.
So I think it's very well known that the Labour group, actually, Chair, left the cross-party working group because we felt that our ideas weren't being listened to and all of the information wasn't very forthcoming. I mean, even if you listen to some of the questions tonight from Councillor Coles, Councillor Burbage, Councillor Howard, it appears that they don't have a full handle on what's going on. So if their group members don't know exactly what's going on with the budget and information isn't being shared with them openly, you can expect the kind of treatment we had when we were part of the cross-party working group. So I think questions need to be asked at some point. Why did two main opposition groups leave? And what could the Conservatives have done better to keep us on board? I'll now move on to a couple of questions, if I may, Chair.
Just one question, please.
One is from Councillor Ali and one is from myself, if I may.
Yeah, just one, please.
Okay, I'll ask one. So I think it's probably better if I address this question to you, Pete. You said that over the last 20 years, we've been high growth and high deprivation. And by definition, I assume what you mean is both of those have contributed towards the challenges that we've faced over the last 20 years. If that's the case, what have we done and why haven't we been able to address that high deprivation to bring it to a more manageable level and possibly even having eliminated it?
Can I just come in first? I suspect that's a question not necessarily for the finance director, but later in the meeting for the section on that particular issue. But I just have to cover that point from Councillor Nawaz, who said our ideas were not being listened to. In all the meetings I attended, Councillor Nawaz, you never put forward one idea. I do not recall one time when you asked for information it was not provided. So that is a slightly naughty way to respond to the point I made. Peter, did you want to add anything?
Chairman, before he does, I must comment on Councillor Waz, because I wrote to the two main ones that didn't take part, asking whether they would. The answer said they put it to their group, and they said no. And when they came back, I said, is there anything I can do to make it better for you? So you can. I'm still waiting for the answer.
In terms of the answer to the two questions from Councillor Noaz, I think in terms of growth and deprivation, it depends on when the indicators are taken and what we continue to have. And all councils who are high growth will have these high indicators. Is a disconnect between when you actually get the grant funding to when you've actually got the uptake. So there's always a lag of maybe a year or two, and sometimes up to 3 years. So that always makes it difficult to keep on top of the situation. But again, they're specific for specific areas. If I step back and look at Peterborough as a whole, as a council, compared to my peers, we don't have an issue, particularly in children's services, in terms of children's services placement cases, because significant work's been done on that over the last number of years under Lou Williams. And also, unlike probably the vast majority of councils in upper tier, we don't have an issue with the high needs block, which is significant in probably 2/3 of the other councils. So there's ups and downs, and it depends on your demographics to how that's affected. But again, part of the issue is things lag.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Yazin, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is around business rates. So with the current situation that we're all living in, with less business intakes and the likelihood of businesses going bust, I have read in the report, and I'm slightly confused, to be very honest, and I would like some clarity on this. In one section, it says that the collection fund is at a deficit, and then the report goes on to say that we have experienced business growth. I'm not entirely sure how we can be at a deficit and still experience business growth during COVID when everyone's in lockdown.
Okay, I can answer that one quite quickly. In terms of deficit, you're quite right. At the moment, we're about 17% down year on year on collections for the 2/3 of businesses who we are collecting business rates from. The other third of businesses, which are retail, hospitality, leisure, and a few of the nurseries, we are getting 100% grant funding from the government, so they are paying no business rates. So in reality to that is lower at the moment, and we are looking how we address it. We are talking to the larger people who aren't paying at the moment. One of the things that hasn't helped is the courts not being open, because obviously you can't follow the full chasing of proceedings. However, it's actually looking positive for next year because of the business rate base. So apart from the issue we're going to have with the Debenhams warehouse, which will close for a short time anyway, at least before a new client is found, we've actually seen the increase in the Gateway industrial park up by the A1 on the top of the parkway, which has increased our business rate substantially. And we've also had a number of things in the town centre which increased business rates. So we have the new Premier Inn, and obviously the things coming online on Flet and Key as well, which has helped. So that's why it's up. So collection this year is down. We wait to see what's announced on next Wednesday by the Chancellor in terms of where we might see relief, because if you all remember, we've been asked not to issue our business rates bills until after the Chancellor speaks on Wednesday. So there is probably going to be relief for targeted sectors of the economy again to help them out next year, which of course helps us in overall terms.
Thank you. Can I quickly ask Pete another question about what he's just said?
If it relates to what you said, the first question, yes, but I only allow everybody to have one question, so it needs to be very brief.
Yeah, it's just about what you said about things looking positive. And then I look at table 1 on page 4, and looking at fund losses. And as we move into the next couple of financial years, it doesn't look so good for us.
No.
In terms of NNDR.
No, but
Sorry, I'm sorry for my ignorance. I don't understand financial terms.
and what we're doing at the moment is following up with collections. And I think, again, one of the important things is we need the end-to-end process to be working properly. Our NDR non-collection is slightly higher than other councils. We need the full end-to-end courts process to have been working. Now, we are only 1% down on council tax at the moment, which is remarkable considering our population. But we do need to do more work on business rates just to make sure we get that number down, which is being done at the moment. But our base will be higher next year because a lot of the, again, around the gateway are businesses that will be open all year and we will be able to charge business rates.
I think this is another example, Pete, where something could have been explained at the budget working group. Councillor Yassine has just mentioned.
Thank you for that, Councillor Ian. Moving on. Okay, thank you for all the questions. Are there any recommendations on that section, please? Please raise your hand if there are. Parish Councillor June Bull, you can't make a recommendation, unfortunately.
No, I can't, but maybe another councillor might want to take it up.
Yeah.
It's about-
Okay, yeah, well, we'll move on then, because you're not allowed to, unfortunately, sorry. Okay.
Could I raise a point of order, Mr. Chairman? Because
you may.
I think, if June wants to put her idea forward, I'd be interested to hear it, because it could be that somebody who is able to put a recommendation forward may wish to take up that idea and put it forward. So could we actually hear it, please?
We'll have the legal, look at the legal, please answer that, please. Paulina?
Yes, sorry, Chair. I wasn't sure if you were asking Fiona or myself.
Oh, Fiona, actually, but
yeah, no, but it's fine. I mean, yes, Councillor Bull can state if she has a recommendation, but she can't actually formally put the recommendation forward. It would have to come from one of the members, councillors on the Scrutiny Committee.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
Chair, I'm happy to put the recommendation forward.
That we would need to hear what it is first, obviously.
Councillor Day, please. Councillor Day.
I need to hear what what Parish Councillor Ball's recommendation is.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, sorry, moving on.
The text
sorry,
come
I
through.
think we'll move on. Sorry.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I think the way you're conducting this meeting in this respect is ridiculous, because it would be really helpful, I think, for the committee if we can hear what June's suggestion is. Then, if we think it's a good suggestion, it could be that members of the committee may wish to put it forward.
With respect, Councillor Sanford, this could have been done before the meeting, couldn't it?
No, it couldn't.
Yes, could, Councillor Sanford. I'm moving on. Can everybody note that we are now considering Appendix A, the MTFS detailed budget position, phase 2, starting on page 41, and Appendix B, budget proposal, starting at page 43. The relevant Cabinet or lead officer will respond to any questions relevant to their portfolio in this section. Would any Cabinet member like to introduce any area of this section or go straight to questions? Please raise your hands if you'd like to say anything on your portfolio, please. Okay, we'll go straight to questions then, please. Any questions, please? Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Page 44, I think communities investment. It's great to see that people within communities will be empowered from within their own communities. How is the investment going to materialize through community and charitable groups, and how are they going to prevent the redirection of these affected persons from accessing the NHS without adequate accessibility in primary care, which is a problem not just in Peterborough, but nationwide? Thank you.
Who would like to answer that question, please?
I think that sounded like a question for Councillor Fitzgerald or Councillor Walsh, Chair.
Councillor Fitzgerald, Councillor Walsh, would you like to respond?
If it's a communities question, it is Councillor Walsh, I believe.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Could the councillor repeat the question, please? I'm not quite sure I understood what he was asking. I'm sorry, but it just wasn't clear.
That's absolutely. That's why we're here for, Councillor Walsh. I could repeat the question.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, yes, indeed, I will do it. As I said, it's a great to see that the people within communities will be empowered from within their own communities. How is the investment going to materialize through community and charitable groups, and how are they going to prevent the redirection of these affected persons from accessing the NHS without adequate accessibility in primary care, which is a problem not just in Peterborough, but nationwide? It's a mixed question, Councillor Walsh. Probably Wayne could have a go at it as well.
I do believe it is in the Think Communities area, so it probably is best for Councillor Walsh to answer that. I don't think it is certainly me, although I'm always happy to oblige, Councillor Iqbal. You just say the word.
I know, indeed, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm still struggling to understand this question. You are saying that you're asking how we are going to help people access health. It's just, are you talking communities or are you talking health, first of all? And could you just rephrase your question so we know where you're going with this? Or let's put it this way, can you state what you think the problem is and then ask the question?
Councillor Walsh, if you're finding it difficult to respond, I'm happy to send you an email.
I think that would be an excellent idea, yeah. And if you could rephrase the question, it's not necessarily that I need it in the form of an email because I'm hard of hearing, but simply because I think what you need to do is clarify what you think the issue is and then ask your question, because it's certainly not clear at all where you're going with this. Okay, and happy to have,
what the rest of the people are thinking about it as well, is it just you?
I must say, Councillor Iqbal, I did find it probably wants breaking down a bit. I did get the sort of first part and then I lost it on the second part, to be honest. Anyway, if you could send an email, that would be lovely. Thank you. Councillor Joseph, please.
Thank you, Chair. If I just read this report correctly, I believe it's saying at the end of 2022-23, there'll be a deficit of 26,793. Is that correct? And if so, would any of the directors of any of the budgets like to advise us how they're going to close that deficit?
I think we've moved on from that section, Councillor Joseph. We're on page 41 onwards. I think that related to the first section.
Page 42. Is that not part of page 41 and 42, Councillor Seaton? Perhaps, maybe.
So Councillor Joseph.
The case. I mean, to respond to that particular point, and I think we did in the first section, we said that we are engaging with MHCLG over the course of this coming year to present a case to them as to why, whether it's within the fairer funding review or outside, this council should have better funding. If you look at us, we're about £77 a head underfunded compared to an average unitary council. So clearly we think we have a very good case to make to government that we should have additional funding in the future. So whether it's the fairer funding review, whether it's from other sources, we believe there's a case for government supporting us in closing that gap in year 2 and year 3. Thank you, Chair.
So it's the manna from heaven approach.
I think that's a very glib approach to take to support for residents in this city. Over the last few months, you know, we've had a MHCLG consultant, Peter said, an ex-finance director from Commentary, and his view was that this council's got a strong case for exceptional support. We've been told that we're open, transparent, and professional in the way we've presented our case to MHCLG. You know, we've had Grant Thornton come in and validate the fact that actually we're a pretty well-run council. There's not a lot more we can do.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Quaram, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question relates to page 44, care home investment, please. So the team consisting of social care workers, with the 74% investment made by Cambridge as compared to the 20-something% made by Peterborough, does that mean that Cambridge will also receive 74% of input from that care team? And will this team be undertaking the remit of supporting care homes for, say, example, CQC inspections, which obviously form a pivotal part of how they run and how safe they're running as well? Thank you.
Wendy Oger-Welburn will take that.
Yes, I'll take that question. Thank you very much for the question. So this is a joint team put together and the funding is proportionate compared to population. But basically the social workers will be going into care homes, and as you say, they will be supporting with the CQC standards. But it's very much focused particularly on our small care homes that have really struggled during the pandemic. But absolutely they will support with those standards.
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis, please.
Thank you, Chair. On page 46, Place and Economy, Aragon Direct Services, the service pressure of 1.5 million. It's 1,500,000, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised this has happened because there is this pressure, because when the services were privatised some time ago and given to Aragon, and it was probably undervalued at that time. But I'm pleased to see that there's a correction in here, although it is a large pressure. But I totally understand the reasons for it, especially within the new fleet and hopefully a new climate change-proofed fleet, looking into electric vehicles at some point. My main question, though, is it talks about improving services, including street cleansing. Now, I'm concerned about street cleansing across the city. There does seem to be a two-tier standard. The standard in the city centre and the standards outside of the city centre, places like Bretton, Warrington, Ortons, etc., around. So I'm hoping that this extra investment, and I just want to get some clarification on this, will improve the cleansing in areas outside of the city centre as well. If whichever cabinet member.
Mark, Councillor Serest or James Coleridge probably best to answer that.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy to at least make a comment, and then we'll let James take over if you don't mind, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. That'd be good. Thank you.
It's not correct to say there's a two-tier service. That's a bit like saying we're going to cut all the grass all the time, irrespective of whether or not it needs cutting. So it's a service that is tailored to the needs of that particular area within the appropriate resources and within the budget. But yes, James will, I'm sure, give you a further detail, and if you want, we'll write to you with a proper in-depth explanation.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Seresti, and through you, Chair. Yeah, we do have different levels across the city, and obviously we have a core team that is in the city centre to maintain that area, which is both good for the general public using the city centre, but is also ensuring our retail major retail area in the city is inviting for people to come and use. We do work with different communities looking at the needs for their different areas, and always happy to come out and meet with councillors in their area if there's areas of concern. And Aragon are obviously, their street cleansing supervisors are obviously always on hand to come and discuss with you areas of concern if we need to look at tweaking different areas of service for different locations. Also, with the looking at the fleet investment, we're hoping this is going to generate additional better service as well, because we're going to get more reliable vehicles that will be able to offer better service throughout the city.
Councillor Sanford, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My point actually follows on from the previous question, actually. When the two-phase budget process was actually brought in, we were told that the reason for having a first phase of the budget in December was that certain savings could actually be sort of implemented in advance of the normal budget process. But what we seem to have here, and I'm particularly looking on page 46, and I'm looking at the item on sort of Aragon, and I'm looking at the item underneath it on reduction of income from energy from waste, that there seem to be a number of items that were in the original phase 1 proposals that now are also appearing in the phase 2 proposals. So have these savings or sort of extra expenditure actually have they actually happened?
I don't know. Who would like to pick that up?
I can. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
What we've done, Councillor Sanford, is actually combine what was usually 2 tables into 1 table. So if you look at the column headings, the first 3 columns were what were agreed in phase 1. The second 3 headings are what is agreed, or 3 columns are in tranche 2, and the final columns are the net effect. So you can see how things have moved during the year from phase 1 to phase 2 to the final position.
Okay, just coming back on that, though, because at the full council back in December, we had a discussion about Aragon. So has that additional expenditure already happened? Because if it's actually happened, then there's no point in actually talking about it further.
No, correct. So, Councillor Sanford, you're right. It was approved in the December cabinet, but for full council and for the full MTFS, we have to show everything in phase 1 and phase 2 in this table. Otherwise, anyone picking up the final budget book, if it isn't all included in this table, wouldn't know what happened in phase 1. So the actual reductions in phase 2 are in the middle 3 columns and are also in the actual first 40 pages in section 5.
Okay, thank you.
Parish Councillor Juneball, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is on page 55 to do with housing services. I'll be very quick. Could the new permanent housing assistant director's post be shared with Cambridgeshire to make savings? And could someone explain to me how the savings of 160k to 105k have been calculated? Thank you very much.
I think that would be Steve Cox, Chair.
Thank
you,
Steve. Thank you, Chair. The housing role that we have in Peterborough is different to the role that Cambridgeshire might have on housing. As a housing authority, we have a very specific set of responsibilities. So while we're always looking for opportunities for sharing, that particular role isn't one that would lend itself to be shared. And on the second question, I'm happy to come back with the details behind the savings figures. That they are essentially around a management service that we would bring in-house and improving the income generation from rental payments. So we think we're confident about those income figures and the fact they can be offset that can offset the cost of the assistant director, who I'm pleased to say actually is now in post.
Utmost thanks. Thank you.
Councillor Iqbal, did you have another question?
Yes, through you, Chair. I've managed to rephrase the question that I was asking and Councillor Walsh couldn't answer it. Can I ask that question, or shall I just go to my question on page 53, Chair?
Yeah, if you could, yeah. Let's try again.
Please, thank you. I know she's very eager to give me an answer. Right, I've rephrased it. The Think Communities document, Councillor Walsh, the Think Communities document states that they will be using communities groups to invest to prevent access to the NHS. How will this be possible when you have to improve accessibility to a GP to help NHS accessibility? Thank you.
Again, I'm not sure who that needs to go to, really, if I'm honest.
If I may, Adrian Chapman, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think Adrian Chapman's present, is he?
Wendy.
Wendy,
sorry.
So thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. Yes, Council, this investment was to provide additional staff within the Think Communities team, which has been supporting the Peterborough Hub. We've also put already additional money into the voluntary sector that would support people to prevent the need for them to access their local GPs. We have put one of the voluntary sector posts is within mental health, one in learning disability, and one in older people as well. So it's a range of different services that we've been able to provide, and through the Peterborough Hub. And it isn't just the council, it is through the parish council, it is through our voluntary community and faith sector providers. We've been able to support people and work with people to hopefully prevent them needing to go to a GP unless they absolutely need to do so. And that's the way we want to continue work going forward. And that's what this additional investment will help with when the COVID funding ends. Hope that's helpful.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Thank you. Chair, can I ask my question on page 53 now, please, if you don't mind?
Can I come back to you if we've got time at the end?
No problems. Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Crowram, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to page number 46, Public Health Agenda for Change. Now, this is a term that I'm often familiar with in the NHS. So I just wanted to know, please, how much are we going to be awarding in the way of a pay award uplift, which the council is legally obliged to pay, and which staff will this cover, please? And is this something that we're going to be looking to pay on a yearly basis? Thank you.
Purely a finance matter, Pete. I don't know if you want to take that.
Thank you. I'm not sure of the actual uplift, Councillor. I will get back to you, but this is ongoing. That's why you see it across all 3 years.
Thank you, Pete.
I would say, Councillor Carrier, just so you know, we will of course pay whatever the rate is in terms of whether it's an agreed pay scale or something that's already been agreed with the union. You can take that as read. Whatever the council is liable for, that's what it will be.
Sure.
Liz, did you want to come in? Sorry.
Yes.
Liz Robin.
Yeah, Dr. Robin, yeah.
Liz Robin, you had your hand up. Did you want to make a comment? You're muted. Okay, Councillor Coles, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is page 51, home to school transport, SDN, and the catchment area review. The issue is clearly that we haven't been able to save money because of the increased use in transport due to social distancing. And I was just wondering whether the extra costs are likely to continue quite as long as 2023-24. Is that just a very careful review about how much money that's going to cost, or can we see that dropping down? Thank you, Chair.
Can I say, I think that's for me to answer, Chair.
Yeah, yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Ayres, yeah.
The answer is, Councillor Coles, that yes, the transport situation savings were not possible entirely due to COVID, and because, as you say, about the social distancing. And I think we've put the figures in to carry on into next year, for example, because we can see that this is still going to be continuing, particularly with the special educational needs children as well. I don't know whether Wendy Over-Wellborn has got more to add to that than I can, but certainly we had got plans to make savings on homeschool transport in both respects, but that has been impossible. So can I ask if Wendy has got any more to add to that?
Through you, Chair, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
Councillor Coles, as Councillor Ayres says, a lot of this has been the fact that we have been unable to actually do what we were going to do because of the need to transport children separately. And we do think that the infection control measures that we've put in place will continue for some time. But also alongside that, the work that we were doing actually across with Cambridgeshire in terms of route optimisation has been delayed as well because of COVID. So it's the two reasons.
Thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Liz Robin, your hand's up now. Do you want to try and come in?
Yes, sorry, it's Dr. Liz Robin, Director of Public Health, on the agenda for change. These are payments which were the agenda for change pay rise for NHS staff that had been awarded over the past 3 years. These were staff who were delivering commissioned public health programmes. So they're not council staff, they're the programmes like the drug and alcohol programmes, the sexual health programmes, the health visiting and school nursing that are commissioned by the council. The Department of Health and Social Care had paid the NHS pay rise over the past 2 to 3 years for this group. But when the public health grant was increased to the council, part of the requirement from that increase was to fund that NHS pay rise that had been given over the past 2 to 3 years at this point. And that will continue going forward. So just to give you a full explanation.
Thank you, Dr. Robin. That clarifies it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Iqbal, your question, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate that. Page 53, People and Communities Blue Badge Services. In reducing staffing costs, does that mean that staff will be made redundant? Thank you.
Pete, can you advise who answer that one?
Sorry, I think Wendy should be able to cover that one off for me, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Wendy?
Through you, Chair, thank you very much. Councillor Iqbal, this is where we're looking to look at the systems we use in terms of Blue Badge and do something across with our colleagues within Cambridgeshire, so it will be efficiencies, it won't be staff redundancies.
Okay, thank you. Any recommendations on that section, please? If you have, can you raise your hand? Dr. Coram, is that a recommendation? Your hand's raised. Okay, no recommendations. Thank you. Okay, can everyone note that we are now considering Appendix C, Phase 1 and Phase 2 budget proposal started on page 59. The relevant cabinet officer or lead officer will, cabinet member or lead officer will respond to any questions relevant to their portfolio in this section. Would any cabinet member like to introduce any area of this section or go straight to questions? If you'd like to make a comment, could you please raise your hand?
I think we should probably go straight to questions.
Straight to questions, yeah. Okay, can we go straight to questions then, please? Starting on page 59. Okay, no questions on that section. Thank you. Can everybody note that we are now
Chair, sorry, Chairman, sorry to interrupt.
Yes, sorry.
Councillor Kyan.
Yes, Councillor Kyan. Sorry, Councillor Kyan.
No, that's okay, Chair. Thank you very much. I'd just like to know on page 59 where the COVID-19 Trans 5 funding has been allocated, obviously, for years 21 to 22. Do we have any idea about where that funding is going to be allocated or distributed, or is it primarily going to be within community resource or in adult social care, or has the decision not been established as yet? Thank you.
Yeah, go on, Wendy. I know you're chomping at the bit.
I'm happy to answer that. It will be reallocated, but the vast majority of that from the original, there was an original list brought out by government about April, May time last year, and it's on those priorities and those lists, which are predominantly adults, children's and housing.
Thank you very much, Pete. And does that mean that obviously help for businesses or council tax, etc., that funding won't actually extend to that help? That's fine.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Over, please.
Afraid I just jumped the gun. Sorry, Councillor. I was on to the next item and you went back.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to that next item. Yeah. Can everybody note that we're now considering Appendix D, the grant registration starting on page 61. The relevant cabinet member or lead officer will respond to any questions. I think we said we're going to move straight to questions. David O, Councillor Over, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is probably going to Councillor Suresti, but others might want to join in. It's vaguely to do with grants, but the whole question is that would it be possible for PCC to fund in some way, maybe through a grant, but elsewhere, to collect fly tipping rubbish from private land on rural areas? We've worked hard over at least 20 years to open up footpaths, which are not public rights of way, only now for farmers to consider closing them because of their misuse and large amounts of fly tipping.
Thank you, Councillor Over. Thank you, Chairman. It's a really great idea. The problem, I'm going to respond to you as I would to anyone else, is if you're not careful, you'd end up spending many thousands of pounds doing that, and I'm not sure that the budget allows it. I'm quite happy to take it away and have a look at the budget, talk to my colleagues, and talk to Peter and Wayne and Farouk, and see if it's possible. But it's a question of money, and if you're gonna put the money into doing one thing, you've got to take it from somewhere else. So great idea. We'll have a look at it. Don't know the outcome, but happy to look at it.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. I would just recommend that you have a look seriously about all the fly tipping that's just done right on the edge of private land and public land, for instance, in farmyard gateways.
By all means.
Councillor Robinson, please.
Thank you. My question's on page 61 and page 62 on grants from the DFE. So I noticed the School Improvement Monitoring and Improvement Grant and the Wellbeing for Education Return Grant, which both funded very important things, are listed as unknown. Is that because we're just waiting for a final number that likely comes soon, or is it that we just haven't had any indication that we'll be getting anything under those two headings? And if we don't, what happens then? Thank you.
Through you, Chair, the response to that is we're still waiting for final notification on a number of grants at the moment, and so as with other councils, if we don't know, we put unknown there at present time.
Councillor Iqbal, please.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, on page 61, with the previous years to youth services, why is it unknown that we don't have a grant towards drug intervention?
Drug and alcohol services would come under Liz Robin and myself. Liz, do you want to pick that up? Or Pete, from a finance perspective?
Yep, I'm happy to pick up. I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question, please?
Yes, Liz. On page 61, with the previous years to youth services, why is it unknown that we don't have a grant towards drug intervention?
Well, Well, our drug and alcohol service with Change, Grow, Live does provide services for young people. So there is work done with young people and funding allocated through our contract with CGL Aspire to work with young people, if that's helpful. That's the work of the Drug and Alcohol Services, which the Public Health commissioned.
I think that this is the point that's the 6th item down on page 61. I don't know, Peter, if that's a similar answer to the one you gave earlier.
It will be. If you look at the final column, you can see if the grant's been confirmed, yes, no, or estimated at the moment, and that's one that still hasn't been confirmed. And so will be one of the ones we continue to chase. And again, a lot of those will come through over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Councillor Coles, please.
Thank you, Chair. Page 62, it's a similar question to Councillor Iqbal related to the rough sleeping drug and alcohol treatment grant scheme. I appreciate it's unknown, it's not yet provided. Certainly my ward and others have got the problem of needles being disposed of carelessly and the ongoing drug issues. I'm just wondering if it's unknown because we're not going to get it, or whether we're just waiting for answers to come back, but we do actually know that we are getting support for groups like Aspire. Thank you, Chair.
Peter, do you want to kick off on that?
I'll kick off. Yeah, we're waiting for further guidance on these. Those two that are blank, I will follow up, but it's because we haven't had confirmation yet. With some of the rough sleeping grants this year, we've had it drip fed throughout the year, and so we just need to ensure that we put a figure in that's realistic, and so we'll chase the department on this one.
I'm grateful for the answer. Thank you.
Okay, are there any recommendations on that section, please? Please raise your hand. Can't see any hands raised. Let's give it a second or two. Okay, can everyone note that we are now considering Appendix E, Council Tax Information, starting on page 63, and Appendix F, Fees and Charges, starting on page 65. Councillor Seaton, would you like to introduce this section or go straight to questions, please?
I'm very happy to go straight to questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sanford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question about an item on page 65. It's about halfway down the page, People and Communities Education, parental contribution to bus passes, which appears to have an 11.6% increase. Could someone explain what that item is actually referring to and why it's having such a large increase?
I think this is probably directed at my directory. Could I ask that Wendy Elkin-Wellborn respond to that, please?
Wendy, please.
Oh, sorry, me. I've got to be honest with you. I don't know the answer to that question. Pete, have you got the answer from a financial point of view?
No, I'm through Chair. I'm unsure as well. Can we get back a full answer to you, Councillor Sanford?
Can I just? Yes, I could perhaps say that I am aware that there has been an increase in contribution, but I'm not aware of the actual figure, so I can't help in that respect. So if we could get back with an email to you, Councillor Sanford, that would be useful.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Are there any recommendations on that item? Please raise your hand. I guess that's the hand still up from last time, Councillor Sanford. Thank you. Can everybody note that we're now considering Appendix G, starting on page 67. The relevant Cabinet member and lead officer will respond to any questions relevant to this section. Would any Cabinet member like to introduce their area, please, if you would, or go straight to questions?
I'm very happy to go straight to questions, Chair.
Okay, have we any questions, please? Councillor Sanford, please.
Yes, I actually noticed on page 69 in the capital programme, there's an item on Crescent Bridge refurbishment. And obviously, one of the things that's recently happened on the Crescent Bridge is the installation of a cycleway, which I've used quite a bit myself, and I understand it's been quite popular with cyclists. Does any of the proposed expenditure relate to this cycle lane, and has the cabinet reached a view on whether or not it intends to make it to make it more permanent?
I think that will be Councillor Hiller, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Hiller. I know he's having trouble with the internet, I think, this evening.
I think Steve Cox might be able to respond.
Okay. Steve Cox, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was going to ask Charlotte Palmer, actually, if she'd like to comment on that. I know she's been running the cross-party member working group on the active travel, if Charlotte's there.
Yeah,
is Charlotte available?
Yeah, I'm here, Chair.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm here, Chair, so I can, through you, Chair, I'll attempt to answer that. So the line in the budget there for the Crescent Bridge refurbishment specifically relates to that piece of infrastructure that the council has a duty to maintain and ensure remains operational for the council. So the funding there is related to the physical infrastructure of that bridge and that structure itself. In relation to the emergency active travel grant and the proposal to retain the pop-up cycle lane on Crescent Bridge, that is something that is still being determined through that cross-party working group and through the relevant cabinet members. So no decision has been made about that at this point in time, but that isn't what this budget is relating to.
Thank you for that. Councillor Josie, please.
Thank you, Chair. Page 67, Operation Can Do. Can I just ask, is that 200 related to the 7.5 million that's supposedly been promised for the area in 2014, I believe 2015, and is yet to be spent, or is this some additional funding? And if so, how are they going to access it this time?
I think that may be Steve Cox again, Chair, if Councillor Hiller's having problems.
Yes, sorry to put the pressure on Steve, but can you answer that one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. The actual funding for Can Do is shown slightly later in the documents on page 69 as part of the match funding for the Lincoln Road element of the town's funding. So the actual amount is 2 million within that figure. So that is matched with the 2 million that we've secured through the town's fund. So the total amount that we were putting together with support from members and residents is against that £4 million figure for the Millfield Lincoln Road area.
And are they able to access it this time, as opposed to any point in the last 6 years that it's been promised?
Through you, Chair, in response to projects that come forward that are consistent with the town's fund, those ideas are welcome, and I think that process has already started. Those ideas will then go into the business case that needs to be prepared over the next 9 months or so, that will be submitted to government and signed off in order to release the funding. So yes, the money can be accessed with the right projects brought forward.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sanford, did you have another question? Your hand's still raised.
I apologise, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. No problem. That's fine. Any recommendations on that? No. Okay. Can everybody note that we are now considering Appendix H, Financial Risk Register, started on page 71. Councillor Seaton, would you like to introduce or go straight to questions, please?
I'm very happy to go straight to questions, Chair.
Okay, take any questions then, please. Councillor Quorum.
Thank you, Chair. It's Qayyum, and I know it's a bit of a...
Yeah, sorry.
Don't worry about it. You don't have to apologise. I often get it a bit Cayenne. Thank you, Chair. So my question relates to page 73 regarding debt. And it's quite surprising, actually, that the Clinical Commissioning Group, or the CCG, currently accounts for 43.7% of the Council's general debtor. How long has this debt actually been carried by the CCG? And seeing that they have their own income stream from, which is largely dependent upon the Department of Health, it does state specifically here in the document that conversations are ongoing with the senior officers at the CCG, but how is this actually going to come to a resolution when they themselves are quite heavily in debt and depend upon that cost stream from the Department of Health, very much like the council is as well? So what's the plans on actually trying to achieve closing that debt? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kayum. Peter Carpenter.
Thank you, Councillor. We have 2 weekly meetings with the CCG and have continued those through this year. At this stage, in the last year, we've cleared over £16 million worth of debt with the CCG. We are down in terms of existing old debt, which is pre 2021 to £6 million now, and of that, £5 million is CHP, which we're having conversations about at the moment. The remainder of that debt is in-year debt now, and Wendy might want to comment on this, but we are moving forward and looking at agreed processes using joint funding tools.
Sure. My concern is that will this further cause any decimation to health services to try and bridge that gap of debt, which could cause obviously detriment to patient care. And that is a concern. And this is the reason why I've asked the question. Thank you.
I think the issue with the debt is that these people are already in care, and the vast majority are from DTOC. So they've already been allocated. And so this is just that in part of the process.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Pete.
Councillor Sanford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the outside organisations that I've been appointed to by the Council is the Audit and Governance Committee of the Combined Authority. And one of the recommendations that we made recently to the board of the Combined Authority is that in their corporate risk register, we recommended that they put a risk in there regarding climate. Now, I am slightly surprised that we've got a report here in Appendix H on the financial risk register, and there isn't anything about climate in that. And the particular aspect of climate I'm thinking of is flooding, because anybody who's been down to Neem Park over the last few weeks will have seen there's been quite a large amount of flooding. Now, parts of Neem Park are supposed to flood, but if the flood water were to come even slightly higher, we could end up with quite large areas of Peterborough being actually flooded. So is that something that the officers could think about, putting a climate risk into the risk register?
I think that's a very good point, Councillor Sanford. We have been updating and improving the risk register recently. Peter, that seems to me a very sensible suggestion.
Yeah, what we can do is, as part of the addendum that will come to council, we can add that in. I think it's a good point. It's interesting around rivers on where liabilities start and finish, because some of it is water board, some of it is us.
Could I just add to that, Chair? And apologies, my internet connection is absolutely dreadful. So I hope I haven't missed anything in the period I've been down. I, with other colleagues, sit on internal drainage board as well as the leader. I'm also a member of the Environment Agency board for the coastal region. So I'd be very, very happy to either through those particular organisations or indeed myself and my colleagues to input into any flood risk assessment going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Sanford, did you want to make that a recommendation? Or are you happy with?
No, I was.
Are you happy with?
I think it's quite important. Sorry, no, I think it is quite important. So I would actually like to put that forward as a recommendation.
Okay, can you repeat it for Paulina's benefit, please?
Yes, okay. I would like to see the financial risk register include a risk in relation to the impact of climate change, with specific reference to the possibility of flooding.
Okay, thank you.
Very happy to accept that, Chair.
Yeah. Are there any objections to that recommendation? Please raise your hand.
Does Councillor Sanford have a seconder for that?
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Yeah, have we got a seconder? Yeah, I'm happy to second that, Pauline.
Thank you, Councillor Simon. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Okay, thank you. Can everybody note that we are now considering Appendix L, the carbon impact assessment, starting on page 81. The relevant cabinet officer, lead officer, will respond to any questions. Any questions on this, please? No, okay, thank you. Can everybody note that we're now considering Appendix J, the Treasury Management Strategy, starting on page 83. Councillor Seaton, would you like to go straight to questions, or do you have anything to say, please?
I think how long the meeting is, we should go straight to questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any questions on that, please? No, okay, thank you. Can everybody note that we are now considering Appendix K, Capital Strategy Programme Disposal, starting on page 113. Any questions on item 13, please? Councillor June Ball, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's about page 135, and I'd just like to see the net book value of these assets scheduled for disposal and the percentage-wise, how much is it likely to be used by the Capital Receipts Flexible Programme, please? Thank you.
I think that's a question for Mr. Carpenter, please.
I will come back with a value, but in overall terms, there's a number on there at the moment, but we're awaiting valuation because works need to be done. But I'll come back with a value for each one I have and circulate it to the committee.
Thank you. Councillor Joseph, please.
Thank you, Chair. One of the suggested disposals is St George's Hydrotherapy Pool. I wonder what plans there are for something to replace this invaluable asset in our city, when 95% of people who attend this centre have expressed improved or greater physical health, reduced visits to their doctors and hospitals, therefore actually saving money, and they've actually had a 95% improvement in mobility and increased independence. So in fact, St George's Swimming Pool is saving the council money year on year and saving the economy money, as well as improving people's lives. So what plans are there to ensure that this city continues to have a hydrotherapy pool?
I'm quite happy to answer, but I think probably Wendy would give you a more rounded view. Do you want to take it on, Wendy?
Yeah, Wendy's got a hand up. So Wendy, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to say that you'll know that St George's Hydrotherapy Pool on a regular basis needs works doing to it. It's in quite poor condition. And we've recently been speaking to one of our special schools that has hydrotherapy facilities to see that how we can negotiate with them to make time for other residents to use that provision as well.
Which is really positive, by the way. That's a very good solution if we can get that to work.
Councillor Kayam.
Thank you, Chair. Just on what Councillor Joseph has just asked, I do recall in our last full council meeting when we were talking about the new regional pool facility that there was obviously going to be a hydrotherapy pool facility there. And one of my questions was whether this was going to be in replacement of the St George's hydrotherapy pool. And the answer that was given to me, and I'm happy for us to refer back, is that actually both will be kept and retained. So obviously on the back of Councillor Joseph's question, assurances were given at that time that the current St George's hydrotherapy pool was actually going to continue. What has changed since then? And are there any documents to refer to on the basis of that decision making since that last council meeting, please? Thank you.
That's not my recollection of events. Wendy, do you want to pick up? There's never been a suggestion in a formal way of any hydrotherapy pool being built into a new leisure pool. There's been some talk of it, but and many did attend the sessions that I chaired on the new pool, you would clearly understand why that's not the case. In terms of St George's, it will come to its natural end of life. And the council don't have a responsibility to provide what is in effect an NHS commission service. But I think we have found a solution, as Wendy has just outlined, because we're keen not to leave people high and dry, as it were. And there are a number of other options, and Wendy's pointed one of them out. Wendy, have I missed anything there?
Wendy,
No,
you've got your hand up, yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, Councillor, it's more to do with the fact that St George's is going to take an awful lot to keep it going financially. So what we've been trying to do is look at other options that may give us a long-term solution. If we do it with an existing school, obviously the school, with the support from the council, would maintain that provision. So I think the reason it's on the disposal list is because we think it will come to end of its natural life soon. We're just trying to work in parallel to see what we could do that would be within a financial envelope that's affordable to our residents as well as to ourselves.
The other positive thing, sorry, Dr. Comey, if you want to come back, is that it's actually also good for the school, who could do with the money that would come in from people paying to use that facility. St George's is dilapidated and aging, and there is no finance or money unless somebody wants to come up with some. But that's maybe something you could talk to the MHCLG about yourselves again. That but I can't see how it would be something that the council would be obliged to supply in their view.
Sure. Thanks, Councillor Fitzgerald. I'm happy to refer back to when this was asked, and I was sort of more concerned about when this decision had taken place. Obviously, with it being in a school and what I see as concerns with lack of accessibility to the general public from NHS referrals point of view, because we do refer patients actively to St George's hydrotherapy pool. I just feel that this could be impacted by placing it in a school. I completely take on board your points with regards to making money for the school, but then you've got a whole sort of conundrum of safeguarding issues as well, where children are going. So we have
I think there's plenty of downtime. So it's of limited use at the moment. And the financial position has changed for many schools. And I think we would really do something to protect in the longer term the availability of hydrotherapy, either in the evenings, at weekends, because school time is only, between 9 and 4, say, or 9 and 3 in the primary. So this is a good solution. There are other options as well, not just that one option, but we don't have the finance to replace the hydrotherapy pool, and I don't think there's a business case, even though I recognize personally some of the issues around care and how it benefits people and how it might save the council money. I don't think that argument was won in terms of the consultants that were taken on to do that, and it was fully discussed at the steering group we put together for the new pool and leisure centre, and it was, every little thing was gone into, and everybody that attended those would know that.
So there's not going to be a hydrotherapy facility at the new regional pool and leisure centre, is that correct?
Not at the moment, no, there are no plans to do so. Mr. Cox might want to just elaborate a bit more on the detail as to that business case and that plan, because it's not directly my area because it comes under Steve and Peter, probably in terms of growth and development. Steve, do you want to add anything in terms of how that conversation panned out? Because there was certainly no promise at council. It may have been spoken about or suggested it could go there, as was a diving pool, as was, you know, any number of other things. So, Steve, do you want to cover that off?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. And
Steve Cox, but Steve Allen as well.
Are you referring to me, Councillor Fitzgerald? Or
I think you're a double act, the two Steves.
We are the two Steves, and we do get confused. Both good looking, I hope. I did answer a question on this back in the Scrutiny Committee, I believe, and it was our intention to try to maintain the pool at St George's for as long as it life's permitted, and then investigate options to relocate. And that's what has been referred to earlier. It was considered certainly at the new regional pool, but the consultants advised against, so that was not taken forward.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the elaborate answers.
Steve Cox, nothing?
Well, through you, Chair, just to confirm what both Councillor Fitzgerald and Councillor Allen have said, a number of options were looked at by the consultants for inclusion at the new regional facility, new pool facility, but were ruled out when the final optimum mix of uses was brought forward. And as Councillor Fitzgerald said, that included the ruling out of a hydrotherapy pool and a diving facility.
Is this going to be subject to a public consultation? Sorry, I keep on asking these questions, but I just find it's important.
What bit are you talking about?
Hydrotherapy pool, the closure of it.
Nobody's saying it is going to close. When it comes to its end of its natural life, if somebody comes up with a business case and a budget for it, Dr. Kine, with anything else, then that must be put to the administration. So it's not something we commission as a council. We are, unfortunately, but we're very glad to do it. And I know Councillor Fox is a big supporter. We all are. We want to keep the facility open as long as we can, but at some point it will break or something catastrophic will happen. So we are looking at other options. I'm not quite sure why we would consult on something that we don't commission or don't provide. If there is a business case to do it, unless you're suggesting we open it and run it at a loss, which I'm not sure that argument would go down very well at all, considering our financial position. So I can tell you now that the cost of doing it, even including it in the pool, it would have made a loss.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Shaz Nawaz, please. Councillor Shaz Nawaz.
Thank you, Chair. My question is in relation to page number 134, the last item on that page, assets held for sale, just over £2 million. In an earlier appendix, it was stated that the intention was to sell £4.5 million worth of assets, but because the economic climate had changed, it was decided not to sell those assets. So I just want to know why we've still got just over £2 million worth of assets that we are holding to sell.
I think it's a question for Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I'll check, but I'm fairly sure those are the two assets that are linked to Section 77 agreements where we need Department of Health approval, which have been on the disposals list for the last couple of years, which amounts to £2 million.
Just a follow-on question, Chair, which is linked to that. Did that £2 million, Peter, form part of the £4.5 million in the previous report, or is it in addition to?
It's part of the £4 million in the previous report, yes.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Correct.
Councillor Gibbs, please.
I was just following on from Councillor Kayam's questions about the hydrotherapy pool. As an ex-physiotherapist, knowing how incredibly valuable a hydrotherapy pool is for an ageing population with arthritic conditions and so on, talking about using schools, I can't see that the school pools would be suitable because they wouldn't have the right temperatures, they wouldn't have the right disability equipment, and I just think it would be sort of just like pushing it over to something where that there wouldn't be a suitability for that kind of service. And I just think it's really important to consider that shouldn't be just shelved aside as if it didn't matter. I don't see how schools can provide the same service in any way.
I think you've misunderstood, Councillor Skipstead. This is a hydrotherapy pool within a school. So it's not a pool.
No, the one that's going to,
it's a proper hydrotherapy pool.
Which one is this you're referring to?
I'm not sure if we're making that public at the moment. If Wendy wants to reveal it, or Linnairs does, because the conversations are still going on. But let me assure you, it's very close to where you are. And secondly, it's a proper hydrotherapy pool.
Right. And would it be something that the public would have to pay for, or would it be?
Yes, they do. They currently pay at the moment.
Right. Okay.
So it is not free, and it would help the school. But the current users pay in the current locations.
Right. Okay. Thank you for clarification.
Councillor Fox, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I share Councillor Quiam's concerns. Obviously, I'm glad she brought up before I got the chance. My concern is, yes, I understand the answers and I accept them. And, let's hope it lasts for several more years before we have to make any decisions. But can you please, because this is the first I've heard of it, which puts me a little bit in shock because I'm in the process of trying to raise funds for it, only minor funds, we wouldn't save the whole building. But please liaise, I'm sure you will, liaise with the volunteers there, because they're a great bunch of people, and especially the users, because they're the ones that benefit. And I really, really mean that. And I'm sure you're going to, but please, because it's a bit embarrassing, because this is the first I've heard about it, but then again, I can understand that reason, because it's probably a little bit confidential at the moment, and things are going on behind the scenes that probably I can't know. But please reassure me that you will keep the volunteers informed as best as you can.
Chairman, so Councillor Fox, this really is forward planning, but it's early stages, okay? So all I can say to you is that we will do all we can, as we've done all along, and I know you're a big supporter, and our group have been supportive as well, to keep the facility open for as long as we can. I think that's clear. But if there was something catastrophic, John, I'm not sure we can guarantee that. So it would be foolish of us not to make plans for an alternative in order to not let those service users down. And by coincidence, it's come to light that we had this other facility, and it's a great facility that nobody really knew about and is underused. But it is a proper bona fide hydrotherapy pool, and that is being looked at as an alternative for the long term and to secure the future for service users.
Yeah, I know that the place you're talking about 100%. And yes, I'm not being mischief making or anything like that. It's just my concern is for the users mainly and the volunteers that work there. And I accept it's a difficult one for you as well. So I'm not, being critical at all.
Okay, Councillor Sanford, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question's also on page 135, the sort of disposal schedule. I want to ask about a couple of items on that list. The first one is the Crescent. Now, it's the first time I've heard that the council is going to put the Crescent up for sale. Could I just ask a simple question? What are the implications for all the community facilities that are provided by the Crescent? And then my second one that I want to question is about the Peterborough United ground. Now, there's been a lot of discussion in the press about the implications of Peterborough United's intention to move from their current ground onto the embankment, and so it wouldn't be appropriate here to talk about the issues of the green space, but I just wanted to ask a question about the finances, because it seems that we purchased the ground and we're now selling it to the football club for a significantly smaller amount than what we paid for it. But the football ground don't want to play. The football club don't want to play football on it. They want to flog it off to a housing developer, and then we're going to provide them, presumably, with a piece of land on the embankment. So I think that is a fantastic deal for the football club, but how is it a good deal for the council?
Can I kick things off there? The Crescent, Councillor Sanford, is, I think, under a long-term lease with the YMCA, and we've always had, we've been working towards an agreement to pass it over to them. I think it's for £1, because I think the lease is 999 years. So it's a technical issue that it appears on this list. And Peter Carpenter, I'm sure, can confirm that. As regards the posh, looking at the figures, actually, we've made a profit on the posh ground. I don't think, I think at this stage, speculating about any future move of the posh is fairly pointless. That it's on the disposal schedule because, as has appeared in the newspaper, we are selling it to the posh. What happens after that will clearly be up to the posh to put proposals forward. Peter, did you want to add anything?
No, thank you. And through you, Chair, I would agree with both. The Crescent has been in negotiation now, from what my understanding, for a number of years. We are now almost at the point where that transfer can happen. There's a number of points we're just clarifying on both sides in terms of the buildings. In terms of posh, again, it's been a long-term process, and we're at the point where we're just finalising the last bits before then it goes through the cabinet member decision notice process. Okay, thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman, I just had something for Councillor Sanford. He asked about the community groups and stuff. I'm a board member at the Crescent, appointed by the council, and I have been for a number of years. So it's a good thing that they're taking it over, and they've spent an incredible amount of money on the building. You will know it well, Nick. And that liability continues to increase. I think there's something circa £2 million of work to be done on that building, which, if we continue to own it as landlords, we would have to foot that bill. But the YMCA, everybody will be familiar with, and the way the Crescent is running, nothing will change. They plan to do all the same things that they've always done. But we will be relieving ourselves of the liability of what is a very aging and dilapidated building, and they're continuing to invest in it. So I hope that gives you some reassurance about what's going on there, and which is why it is on the books at what it's on the books at. And they've spent considerable sums already.
Yes, thank you very much for that. That is quite reassuring. Just for the sake of transparency, I would just like to say that I actually attend a church at the Crescent, so that's. Yeah.
I've seen you many times.
Oh, indeed, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We only had 10 minutes on that section. I see there's 3 more hands. If they're very quick questions, we'll go to Shaz Nawaz, please, very quickly.
Thank you, Nigel. Very quick question in terms of land at the mill, plot 7 and 8, Peter. I thought that was sold with the mill. Is that correct, or is this additional land above and beyond the land sold with the mill?
This is the mill, Councillor Nawaz. So this is linked to that disposal, and that's almost at its completion now.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Iqbal, very quickly, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. What is the current up to plan for the market and stallholders, and how viable, if any, plans are they going to be?
I think that's probably a question for Steve Cox.
There is a working group established to look at options for the market, and that's an awesome group at the moment. Councillor Seresti may want to comment on that, but all options are being considered for the type of market and the location of the market within the city centre.
I would just add, Chair, that clearly in the heading to this, we do say under consideration for disposal.
And I would just like to add that we all believe that our market is an important part of our community, and we are doing a great deal of work to try and find an alternative position and to provide the city with a really top-class market in the future. But beyond that, I can't tell you because we don't know.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holder, do you want to say something quickly? You're muted, Councillor Holdridge.
Okay, there's a planning application from North Minster will go in the next couple of months, and that does still include a market within it. If you want to move the market somewhere else, everybody would be quite delighted, I think, but the market is still in the proposal to go forward for a planning application within North Minster.
Thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Kayam, quick last question.
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to ask, because these stallholders have been out of work, are they going to be kept up to date and informed because of the future with regards to the city market at all? And have they been consulted on with regards to provisional plans? Thank you.
Is that Steve, is it?
I think the quick answer through you, Chair, is yes, they will be kept updated.
Thank you. Okay, item 14. Oh, sorry, any recommendations on that item, please? That section? No, okay, thank you. Okay, item 14. Can everyone note that we are now considering Appendix L asset management plan starting on page 139. Councillor Seaton, do you want to go straight to questions, please?
Yes, please, Chair.
Okay, any questions on this section, please? Okay, item 15. Have the committee got any further comments or recommendations they'd like to make, please? Please raise your hand. Okay, thank you very much. I'd like everybody to thank everybody for attending and advise the meeting is now closed. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Nigel. Thanks, Nigel. Well done.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chair.
Thank you.
See you, everybody.
Good night, all. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Councillor Simons.
Thank you, Chair.
Paulina.
Good night, everybody. Go safe.
So just one moment, we just need to switch it off live.
Paulina.
Bye, everyone.
So just bear with me, councillors. I just need to switch off the live stream. So